Thank you for taking the appropriate action if you do not want to be included in the recorded information session. All the remarks today are on the record and for attribution. Since we last spoke in the fall, Reclamation has continued to work on the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. This information session is designed to update you on our progress and address your questions. We plan on addressing as many questions as possible during the question and answer period following the presentation today. Updated information about Reclamation's implementation of the law is always available at usbr.gov/BIL, www.usbr.gov/BIL. You may also submit your questions and comments to usbr.bill@usbr.gov, and we will work to address your questions. Once again, that address is usbr.bill@usbr.gov, and we will work to address your questions there. We also have a growing list of frequently asked questions, and we hope this is a helpful resource for you. We are committed to transparency throughout this process and appreciate your support of this historic opportunity to improve our nation's water infrastructure. It is now my honor to welcome Deputy Commissioner David Palumbo for some opening remarks. Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Peter, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. I know it's early on the West Coast, and again, really appreciate you taking the time here today. The Biden-Harris administration is focused on strengthening our tribal relationship, promoting equity, justice, and nation-to-nation dialogue. We're here today to talk about the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, BIL. Let me start off with a few successes. We've allocated, as of today, $1.4 billion to 248 projects. That is a remarkable feat for our staff and for you all to accomplish that in such a short period of time. We have some announcements we're going to talk about today that are upcoming. Two notice of funding opportunities, one for environmental water resources projects and another for aquatic ecosystem restoration projects. And we're also prepared to announce very soon our Rural Water 2023 allocations. We've had great participation in Bill, as evidenced by those numbers, and we've also had great participation in our Native American Affairs Technical Assistance Program, which is well funded. This administration is really focused on funding that program. That's outside of Bill. What we'd like to do now is ensure that tribes are part of the BIL funding. We need that for a variety of reasons. One, for equity, again, Biden-Harris administration priority. Water reliability and resilience to drought. What we're facing across the West is acutely affecting tribes, and we want to leverage the funding we have in BIL to help tribes. You'll hear more about how to participate today. And we want to make sure that you all take advantage of the notices of funding opportunities that are online. We also want to underscore that if there's any assistance that is needed in completing applications, we have a process for that. And we'd like to encourage you to avail yourself of that process to ensure that the applications are complete, your questions are answered, and that the competition there for those dollars is very strong from our tribal partners. So help us keep the momentum moving forward and look forward to the discussion and dialogue and questions here today. Thank you very much, and I'm going to turn it back to you, Peter.
Thank you, David. It is now my pleasure to introduce Assistant Director of Program and Budget, Beth Hughes-Brown, and Deputy Director of Operations, Matt Masieri. Matt?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Peter. Thanks, Deputy Commissioner Palumbo, and thanks all of you for joining today's session. Again, I'm Matt Masieri, and I work in the operations group here in the Reclamation DC office. And together with Beth Hughes-Brown, who you'll meet again in a second, we are co-leads on implementing the BIL at the staff level. So we'll walk through some slides with you today, and we've got time set aside to take your questions. With this first slide here, number 2, overview for today, as mentioned, we'll get a little bit into the BIL implementation backdrop. We will summarize some of what is actually happening on the ground right now as of 2023. We will give you a sort of a past, present, and future on funding opportunities. We'll go over and summarize some of the implementation activities that are happening alongside BIL. And those last 3 bullets there, we have some tips on applying for financial assistance that basically apply to any program, whether it's small storage or water smart. And then we've got updates on Buy America and our own staffing, followed, of course, by any comments and questions from this group. So thanks for coming with us on this call, and we can go to the next slide. So just high-level overview, implementation backdrop. As folks know, if you've been following the news, we've had some very good hydrology in recent weeks in the distant west, in California and the Northwest and some of the interior West. We had some very good storms in California that are continuing right now. And we are in a situation where, as our operations manager in Sacramento said a few days ago, we are simultaneously in drought and we are in flood operations on projects like the Central Valley Project in California. So we've had several years, though, of entrenched drought, and it's going to take a long time to get us out of it. That said, that's the implementation backdrop for us as we implement this law. We still have a lot of urgency associated with many of the projects that are selected under BIL. So it's gratifying to be able to apply some resources to that problem, but we're also encouraged and heartened by the improved hydrology this year and hope it continues. I'm going to hand off the next slide to my co-lead, Beth Hughes-Brown, from our budget office.
Thank you, Matt. So I wanted to point out that the last slide that you just saw, the drought slide, shows you where the drought is happening primarily. And of course, this is saying where it is we're allocating funding. You'll notice a great deal of overlap, not a coincidence. So what you're looking at here is where our projects have been allocated funding. There are no more than 240 of them. And because of the fact that I couldn't read this myself, I've gone ahead and given you here are the colors. Water Smart is blue, by far our largest number of projects. Red and orange is aging infrastructure. Green is Colorado River endangered species. Purple is rural water projects. Orange is storage and conveyance. And yellow is dam safety. This is also on our webpage, and please feel free to take a look. This is a pretty awesome slide. And awards have happened in all 17 Western states, plus Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. Next slide, please. There we go. Projects we've allocated more than 1.4 billion in funding, which is, about our usual yearly appropriation. So that's a very big deal to date. So that's just roughly over a year. 14 NOFOs is what we call them, notices of funding opportunities, or application cycles have been issued to date. An awful lot of them have happened in the Water Smart area. New programs are underway, getting their feet wet and about ready to issue their first NOFO for the small storage program, aquatic ecosystem restoration, and environmental water resources projects. And that one's just about ready to hit the streets very soon. Please pay attention and make sure that you're on the list to get that information. These are happening within the next few days. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a tricky one. We're going to start with me and go to my colleague, Avra Morgan, who is one of the managers, along with Dean Maroney, of the Water Resources and Planning Office, a very valuable colleague. So aging infrastructure is one of our major programs. It altogether is allocated $3.2 billion in the BIL, in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And in the first year, we had 136 applications totaling 1.088 billion, of which we allocated 240 million to 46 projects in May of 22. In fiscal 23, with 649 million available, we've already had over $2 billion in applications I think it's about 87 applications. For rural water, which is not on this list, but it's a huge success story for the BIL. It's kind of pretty much the poster child. It's where we can put water and put funding to directly impact underserved populations. We're delighted and grateful for that. And in the first year, we allocated $420 million for 6 projects, and in this year, we are expecting to use. I'm sorry, 420 in the first year, and this year we're expecting to allocate the 248 that's in the spend plan very soon. I'm going to segue to Avra Morgan to talk about Water Smart.
Thank you, Beth. I'm Avra Morgan. I work for the Bureau of Reclamation in our Denver office, and I work on Water Smart. Some of the other, I guess 8 of the other funding opportunities that are shown on this slide are part of the Water Smart program, and this summarizes the funding opportunities that were announced in 2022 and the selections that were made. So just to identify a couple of those, our water and energy efficiency grant selections were announced in June of 2022. Our environmental water resources projects, which is a relatively new aspect of Water Smart, it includes funding for in projects with environmental benefits. And those were announced in July of 2022. Our Title 16 water reuse and recycling projects were announced in August of 2022, as well as our desal construction projects, which were announced in March. Our drought resiliency projects, which provide funding for projects that help provide some flexibility to water managers, things like lowering an intake or treating a small amount of water or installing a connector pipe to access a different source of water. Those were announced just recently in December of 2022. Our small scale water efficiency projects were announced in January 23, just recently. Those are water conservation and efficiency projects that are, as per the name, smaller in scale and smaller dollar projects. And we award quite a few of those every year. The water and energy efficiency grants for 2023 closed in July. And that summarizes last year's funding opportunities. We move on to the next slide, we can talk about what's coming. Not quite seeing it yet.
Next slide, please.
It should be up there, Avra.
There it is. No, it
Okay,
just
good.
popped up. So to provide just a little bit of background for those of you that may just be learning about the Water Smart program, it is an umbrella program that includes a set of funding for projects that improve water management across the West. And the funding opportunities for Water Smart are issued every year, so annually, and their funding is allocated on a competitive basis. Every funding opportunity includes the criteria that we use to select these projects, and we rely on reclamation staff with a lot of expertise in the project area to help us run a very effective, competitive, and transparent selection process. That's just a little bit of background. These are the numbers on this slide of bill funding that was allocated for the Water Smart programs over the 5 years of the range of funding. So you can see that we were very fortunate and received quite a large allocation for Water Smart grants, $400 million. And that includes not just our water conservation and efficiency projects, but also projects that support natural and nature-based solutions. Title 16 program, that's water reuse and recycling projects, received $550 million, and large-scale water recycling, $450 million. This large-scale water recycling program is brand new, and we'll be issuing the first funding opportunity for that program this coming spring in 2023. Desalination projects received $250 million. The Cooperative Watershed Management Program, which supports watershed group formation and planning, received $100 million. The Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration and Protection Projects, which is also brand new, and we're about to release our first funding opportunity for this program, received $250 million. And then the multi-benefit projects to improve watershed health, which also support projects for environmental benefits, as well as fisheries benefits, including tribal fisheries and also recreation, received $100 million. Next slide, please. So bill projects in 2023, this is what's coming up next and very soon. The very first one that is up and running, open for applications right now is a funding opportunity for planning and pre-construction of water recycling, desalination, and large-scale water recycling projects. The funding opportunity closes at the end of February. This is a great way to get started with a water reuse project by doing some planning and pre-construction activities so that you can be ready for a future opportunity for on-the-ground construction. Our Environmental Water Resources Projects funding opportunity is opening very soon. This includes funding primarily for projects with environmental benefits, but it also includes, as I mentioned on the previous slide, that multi-benefit projects authority, so that it also supports projects that have benefits to commercial, tribal fisheries, commercial or tribal, that is, and also recreation type projects. And it also includes funding for projects that conserve water, so long as that water is conserved for primarily environmental purposes, and projects for nature-based solutions. So things like reconnecting a floodplain, using wetlands to store water or to clean water, restoration of river reaches, including bringing the stream banks and stream bottom back to a normal, healthy river flow that will support aquatic life. The maximum that can be requested under this Environmental Water Resources Projects funding opportunity is $3 million per project. And let's see if there's anything I missed. No, I think I covered it, but you can think of this one as projects with environmental benefits up to $3 million. Next slide. Coming soon, as I mentioned, our first Aquatic Ecosystems Restoration Project funding opportunity. And you can think of this one kind of like the older brother of the Environmental Water Resources Projects. So this funding opportunity is for larger scale projects with environmental benefits. Can include projects to remove barriers to fish passage, but it can also include restoration projects, typical restoration projects to support aquatic health. Our water recycling, desalination, and large-scale recycling planning and construction bill-funded funding opportunity is also coming this spring. And as I mentioned before, the planning part of the planning funding opportunity for that same water reuse and recycling program is out right now. All of the funding opportunities, application cycles are listed on our websites and on these slides, and they repeat every year. So in 2023, we will offer the same funding opportunities that we did in 2022, except for a couple new ones in addition to those that I've gone over today. And we also may combine bill funding with regular FY22 and 23 appropriations to enable us to provide more awards. That I will hand it over to Matt Mosieri.
Thanks, Avra. So tearing off of that a little bit and going back toward just core reclamation infrastructure, the traditional sort of backbone of the reclamation portfolio across the West, BIL made its biggest allocation for that, for aging infrastructure, that $3.2 billion total over 5 years. And the next couple slides just go over a little bit of that. And we have, in case we have some questions and answers on that, we have some contacts from our asset management division on the phone to help us out with any phone a friend needs that we might have. But in summary, huge unprecedented investments are happening right now in our aging infrastructure in conjunction with our partners. That photo thanks to our folks in our Boise office. That is work that was happening last year that wasn't BIL funded, but is getting BIL funding. So we're merging in infrastructure law funding to ongoing rehabilitation of our infrastructure with our partners who benefit from that infrastructure. And it really helps move the money quickly and get projects completed faster on the ground. And that's just one of the many aging infrastructure programs that projects that we have underway, that one out of Idaho. We can go to the next slide. And this is one in Utah, just east of Provo, on the Weber Basin project, where we're basically one of dozens of BIL funded projects that are in active implementation right now, whether that's the final design to permitting to actual construction. And so we are merging these resources in our FY22 spend plan for the BIL. We have, again, the $3.2 billion total. We have to parcel it out year by year. We had 240 that we allocated for aging infrastructure in 22. In 23, we're upping that dramatically by almost 3 times, up to about 650 million roughly in FY23. So we're coming up with more and more projects, and you heard Beth give that overview in her opening remarks. We also, in addition to our own Reclamation BIL funding, we won't get too deep into this, but as an FYI, the Department of the Interior, that the Bureau of Reclamation is part of, has its own appropriation for the infrastructure law, and we are also participating with helping the department come up with project lists for the ecosystem restoration appropriations under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law for the department. So that's just general orientation, not a big part of this presentation, but wanted to make sure folks were aware of that it is basically a team effort between the department and the bureaus. Next slide, please. So one thing to know is, this is going to be a partnership between Reclamation and our non-federal partners, including tribes. About 2/3 of the Reclamation appropriation for the infrastructure law, about 2/3 of that 8.3 billion gets implemented through some kind of funding opportunity. That's why you had Avra give such a great recap of the numerous funding opportunities, because 2/3 of this is going to be done through some kind of application. And so we've been doing these stakeholder sessions and tribal sessions to keep you aware of it. We really want your participation. We need your participation to get that money out on the ground, because the merit of the projects that you come up with, as well as the actual implementation, you help us with the implementation so that the benefits get delivered to the communities that actually need it. That photo there is just it's a photo from one of our aging infrastructure projects, but we have tons more work on the way. As you heard, Deputy Commissioner Palumbo started us off. We funded about 248 projects to date, and there's several dozen more coming in the next several weeks. And water smart opportunities will keep on rolling out. Other funding opportunities and spend plans will keep on rolling out. And that second bullet there, I want to really point out, everything in the water smart program is open to tribes. Some programs are a better fit than others. There's cost shares that are of varying sizes. There are projects that are varying sizes with different scope and intentions, whether they be planning oriented, construction oriented, or operationally oriented, or somewhere in between. But please know that there's a lot of those opportunities. They roll out all year long. I saw someone put in the chat a request to get on the notification emails, and we will definitely show you where you sign up. I think Chelsea responded, but please keep the tempo coming on helping us implement. And with that, I will hand off back to Beth Hughes Brown for the next slide.
A nice segue. Thank you very much, Matt. Here's where you sign up for getting the information about what's coming up next. That is the site usbr.gov/BIL, and you can sign up. As you can see, you can sign up and say which topics you're interested in and get that information about funding opportunities that are up and coming. For Water Smart, I think the numbers are, we had 180 different projects funded under Water Smart. Of the ones that we had so far, 155 of them Water Smart proper, and 25 of them Title 16. That's an awful lot of projects. Please make sure you are aware of and getting informed of upcoming opportunities using this mechanism. Next slide, please. We wanted to make sure you're aware of, although this is not the topic of this discussion today, but aware of the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA. This is being managed separately. Bob Wolf is one of the folks that is managing this, and he's on this call. but it is a $4.6 billion for various purposes. And that's a separate endeavor than what it is we're talking about here. But we just wanted to make sure you're aware of it, since some folks tend to confuse this. You can go to usbr.gov/inflation-reduction-act to get more information about that. You see the topics there. Those are that is what the legislation says we should spend the money on. That's analogous to what we're doing with BIL. As you're very well aware, if you've been on these presentations since the beginning, each of the 12 programs that we've been talking about today have their own purpose and their own ceiling for dollars and so on. And so I think those of you who have been here with us a while know very much about that. So I won't go into much detail. Available for any questions on the topic, though. So this is just FYI. Next slide, please. Other activities and implementation. Colorado River drought. I don't think that there's anybody who's not aware of what's going on with the Colorado River and the drought there. More than $1 billion from BIL has been allocated to projects in the Colorado River using one or another of these programs that we've been talking about here. They span endangered species, drought relief, aging infrastructure, and more. And so there's more BIL allocations forthcoming specific to the Colorado Basin. And as I just referred to, more as well from the Inflation Reduction Act. But today we're talking about BIL, and this is very much a priority for us. I'd like to turn your attention to my colleague, Heidi Morrow, who has just joined us. She's from the Mission Support Organization, and she'll be talking more about grants and the mechanisms you need to know about for that purpose. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you, Beth, and good morning, everyone. Today, I wanted to share some information on the grant process. The grant process at Reclamation is governed by federal regulations and Department of Interior and Reclamation policy. As Aubrey mentioned before, all of the bill-funded programs are competitive, meaning that applications are required to have certain items included upon submission and are rated against criteria provided in the specific NOFO. There are several documents and steps to complete by the applicant during the application period, and those are outlined in each NOFO. As such, I do suggest that if you are interested in applying for a grant, you start on your application early. Upon receipt of the application package, a review is completed, which can take several months. The length of time is impacted by the number of applications and the complexity of the program. After selection of successful applicants, there are several more steps required by both the grantee and Reclamation prior to awarding the grant. Next slide, please. Thank you. The process that occurs during the review of the application package and after the selection is made includes items such as a preparation of statement of work, validation of budget, verification of registration on sam.gov, review of past performance, and any past single audit reports. For awareness, there are some other items that impact the selection and award process that include significant increases in both funding and the number of awards. One critical piece to help the process move more quickly is providing complete and timely application packages. So again, please pay very close attention to the requirements listed in the NOFO for the grant to which you are applying. If you do have any questions about applying for a grant during the application period, there are specific points of contact listed in each NOFO. There are several resources outside of Reclamation that you can also use if you're applying for a grant. sam.gov provides information on how to register in that system, which is required for all federal grant recipients. Grants.gov, which is a system that Reclamation and the Department of Interior use to post notice of funding opportunities and for grantees to submit applications, has numerous training videos on using the system to apply for grants. Some resources internal to Reclamation include our WaterSmart page at www.usbr.gov/watersmart, and that we have information and training webinars that are held shortly after each NOFO is published. And of course, the NOFO, as I've talked about before, and if selected, there are webinars held after selections are announced. Next slide, please. So if you are selected to receive a grant from one of our many reclamation programs that we've talked about today, the funding is used for infrastructure. If the funding is used for infrastructure, you will be subject to the requirements of Buy America provisions in the bill. In general, Reclamation's financial assistance programs that will result in a constructed item must comply with these provisions. The programs that are both covered and exempt from Buy America are listed here on this slide. Next slide, please. If you do feel that you will not be able to comply with the provisions of Buy America, there is a process to request a waiver exempting purchases from the provisions of Buy America. DOI did have a 6-month waiver adjustment period that expired on January 12th. So at this time, the requirements of Buy America do apply to all purchases made unless you have a specific waiver. Currently, there are 4 proposed waivers: a small financial assistance waiver, which would exempt grants less than $250,000 from the Buy America provisions, a de minimis waiver, which would exempt grants that have less than 5% of infrastructure purchases, and specific project level waivers for AMI water meters for Santa Clarita and the city of Rialto that are making their way through the process. Those waivers and any future waivers can be found at www.doi.gov/grants/buyamerica/waivers4comments. We'll drop this link into the chat. If you would like to pursue a waiver for your project, please reach out to your grant officer technical representative or the project manager that you work with on a regular basis here at Reclamation. Thank you very much. And now over to Brian Rainey, Reclamation's Human Capital Officer, for a discussion on staffing.
All right, thank you, Heidi. First, I want to apologize for not having a camera. I'm battling technology, and this morning, and technology is winning. But just so you know, Reclamation continues to make some positive progress in our hiring, thanks to the efforts of our 6 servicing HR offices and all of our hiring managers. We're using a variety of hiring authorities and hiring flexibilities to continue to attract a diverse workforce. We predominantly use usajobs.gov, and what we're doing is tagging our vacancy announcements as bill positions, which then makes them the first jobs people see when they open up USA Jobs. Of the jobs posted, as you can see, there's 187 posted right now that are BIL. The large variety of them, and they include from 6 different federal agencies, not just DOI. They are reclamation positions. And these positions include a large variety of different skill sets, different grades, different locations, as well as pathways and entry-level type positions to include recent graduate positions. Again, we continue to make positive progress in our hiring efforts for BIL. Unless there's any other questions or comments, I pass this back over to Matt.
Thanks, Brian and Heidi, and I'll try and wrap us up here, and then we'll get to questions and answers. A few things to highlight from Heidi's slides and from Brian's slides. From Brian's slides, obviously, human capital is a huge part of implementing the BIL. Our annual budget now, final appropriated budget per year, independent of BIL, is coming up on $2 billion a year. Our BIL implementation per year is about 1.6 billion per year, and we also now have the IRA layered on top of that. So an agency that was trucking along at a certain amount of budget has had it more than doubled per year. So human capital, making efficient use of the capital that you have, acquiring more talent where you can, is a huge part of our BIL implementation that Brian helped us with. On Heidi's slides, just something to emphasize that was part of her presentation, but want to make sure it gets across. Everyone that applies for Reclamation financial assistance, we need you. We need you, as I said, to complete BIL implementation to get good projects. But please know that Reclamation having a lot of money does not equate to, we can't have incomplete applications. We can't have, applications sent in with a let's see what happens. In fact, the opposite is true. When we have a lot of money, it's actually competition for our reviewers' time. So complete applications obviously move a lot more swiftly than incomplete applications, and our ability to rectify incomplete applications is pretty limited by what's in the Code of Federal Regulations, that 2 CFR Part 200. So please know that having a lot of money doesn't necessarily make it open season on easier applications or less complete applications. Not saying that that's a widespread problem. We just want to flag it because of the human capital constraints associated with moving this much money. So as the final bullet on Heidi's slide said, please help us help you get these programs implemented. With that brings us to our final points. The infrastructure law is happening now. Money is getting out the door now. Construction is happening now. Contracts are being signed. Cooperative agreements and funding agreements are happening now. And it's going to keep on like this. This tempo is going to keep up and get more accelerated as we move through calendar and fiscal 2023. It consists of funding opportunities. It consists of spend plans and application periods. It's a lot of activity because BIL is divided into several different statutory areas for us, all of which have their own protocols associated with them. Having said that, we're confident it will be a success because it is crowdsourced. It'll be a success because of the partnerships we have with you, our tribal nation partners, because of the collaboration and because of the focus that we have on proven programs, proven projects, performance, and results. So thank you guys for being part of it. Thank you guys for being part of the implementation out on the West. Thank you for being part of these stakeholder sessions. And thank you in advance for any questions or comments that we can help you with today. With that, I will hand it back to you, Peter, to run us through the last parts of the call.
Thank you, Matt. At this time, we will address your questions. Any questions that you may have. Please raise your hand using the hand icon at the top of the screen. You may also submit your questions by sending an email to usbr.bill@usbr.gov. So at this time, please raise your hand using the raise hand icon. We do have a question through chat. And Heidi, I'm going to give this one to you. Is there a waiver for Davis-Bacon for small water smart grants?
No, there is not a waiver for Davis-Bacon. The waiver process only applies to the requirements for Buy America.
Thank you, Heidi. At this time, we will go to Matthew Berwalde. Sorry if I haven't pronounced that correctly. You may unmute yourself and enable your camera.
Hey, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thanks, Peter. Matt Bearwald, Snoqualmie Tribe, Washington State here in the Puget Sound area. So thanks. This is really exciting to hear. Thanks for the summary. Definitely the opportunities are exciting to hear. So I guess a comment and a question. We're really appreciative of the funding that Bureau of Reclamation has made available in Indian country, and Snoqualmie's been able to access that through Tribal Assistance Program in the past, and it's been really helpful. My comment is that in the past, the time period between project development for the NOFO and when tribes and other applicants submit their proposals to when we hear back a decision from Bureau of Reclamation can be pretty long. And that makes it really challenging for project managers for a bunch of reasons, one of them just being costs and cost increases that can happen in the meantime. And so the comment is that if it's possible to sort of, narrow that time lag and get decisions back to applicants a little bit quicker, that would be awesome. And the question, I guess, are there structures and, I heard about hiring, are there structures and processes in place that maybe can help, enable that? Thanks.
Thank you. Matt or Beth, do you have any, or Heidi, go ahead.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for your question. I think that I can perhaps answer some of it, and Avra Morgan or Matt or Beth can help with part of it. Thank you for sharing your concerns about the length of time that it does take. As I talked about during the presentation, there is a review process that does take some time, and it depends on the complexity of the application and the program. And Avrik maybe can speak a little bit more to that. And then you asked, are there structures to help shorten the time frame? I will tell you that Reclamation, at least from a financial assistance perspective, and from the review process, are looking at hiring more people, number one, and number two, training more people to be able to review those applications and things. So we've got that going for us. In the past, there may be some other options once you, if you are selected for a grant, that we might be able to employ for you that maybe Aubrey can give some more information on. So Aubrey, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, yeah. Our selection process has a couple of steps. So after you submit your proposal, the financial assistance office actually does a screening, and then our office oversees the team that reviews the proposal and scores it. After the proposal is scored, we do some red flag review, make sure there's nothing we weren't aware of, and get it off to our commissioner for final approval. We feel like we've gotten this selection process timeframe down to a pretty tight turnaround. For some of the larger programs, it can take a little longer. If we're getting 200 applications for a particular program, like the water and energy efficiency grants, that selection process can take a little longer just by virtue of the number of projects. But some of the smaller programs, applied science, let's see, the environmental programs where we receive fewer applications, that selection process can go a little bit more speedily. Like Heidi has said, having a tight application with all of the financial information in it and ready to go will help on that second part after a project is selected. Between the time of selection and award, that's when Heidi's office takes over and works on formulating a financial assistance agreement. That part of the process will definitely go faster the more prepared you are with all of your registrations and having all of the budget information and support in place. But with all that said, we do appreciate your comment, and we are looking for ways to try to tighten up that whole time frame. I do understand that delay can be tough to plan that far out in advance. And if you have questions about WaterSmart and the programs, please feel free to reach out to me, Avra Morgan. Happy to try to answer your questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one note, if you don't mind, and that has to do with those other programs other than WaterSmart and the many, 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 many applications for WaterSmart funding. We've talked before about aging infrastructure, and if you get, like we are this year, we've just gotten about $2.3 billion worth of applications for $649 million. We do treat this with great due diligence, and so it goes through a very strict process to get from here to there. Many hands have to review it for various different purposes. Our regular appropriation, our regular process for building an appropriation for the next year takes approximately a year, actually about 10 months. So this taking about 3 months is pretty normal, I would say, if not amazingly fast. I say that with the understanding that your point about the fact that, for example, the cost can change, we're aware of that. And we take that into consideration as much as we possibly can. We understand that factor. So please don't give up on us. We're here for you, and we want to make sure we accommodate you in any way we possibly can.
Matthew, thank you for your question. Once again, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. If you're on the phone, please hit *5, and you can raise your hand. But if you have any questions, please raise your hand. Once again, we have everyone here. If you have any questions or comments, we would be happy to address them at the time. You may also submit those by emailing usbr.bill@usbr.gov. and we'll get right back to you with the answers to your question. We've also put frequently asked questions on our website at usbr.gov/bill. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. We'll give it another 30 seconds or so to see if you have any questions. Okay, this time we'll go ahead and wrap up our presentation. Well, it looks like we got one question in chat here. Has there been any thought of reducing cost share to tribes, especially tribes being most are economically challenged? Matt, do you want to?
Sure, I can start off and then I'll hand off to Avra Morgan in the Water Resources Planning Office. So a good thing about Reclamation's portfolio of programs, we've got a lot of different programs on any given day. One of my favorite programs that we use that really is direct assistance is the Native American Affairs Technical Assistance Program. There is no cost share required on that. We have funding opportunities that come out for that every year. We are doing so now. They're both regional in focus as well as centrally administered. That is, we have a national NOFO, and then we'll have regional funding opportunities every year, like clockwork. And again, no cost share on that. Some of the things that are funded are cost shared under the Native American Affairs Technical Assistance Program, but it's not statutorily required to have a cost share from the participating tribal partner. And that budget has been increased over the last 2 years, thanks to budget requests from Reclamation and congressional appropriations. So there is no cost share on that. However, on the other programs that have been profiled, particularly the Water Smart funding opportunities, I'm going to turn over to Avra to speak to those because the cost shares, she's got a lot of very good knowledge on the specific cost shares associated with those programs and can be better responsive to that question. Avra.
Thank you, Matt. Yes, so the cost share amount is governed by what is in the statute that authorizes the program. And we have seen some changes recently to make that cost share more favorable. So, for example, for our environmental water resources projects, applicants can qualify for up to a 75% federal cost share, so long as the project is going to provide substantial benefits to the environment and it was based on a collaborative planning effort. We also have the new Aquatic Ecosystems Program, which has a 65% federal cost share. Again, that's for large-scale restoration projects, river restoration projects, and removal of fish barriers. So that's right there in the law that authorizes those programs, a more favorable cost share for everybody. In addition to that, some people don't know this, but the Cooperative Watershed Management Program, which supports the development of a watershed group, can be a tribal watershed group, and restoration planning does not require a cost share. So the act that authorizes that Cooperative Watershed Management Program doesn't require a cost share for those projects that are to develop a watershed group and to do watershed restoration planning, collect data, plan projects. So there's that. A couple of other things that people may not be aware of. The drought response program, drought contingency plans, folks can ask for a waiver based on economic reasons. So under that drought contingency planning for drought plans, under that funding opportunity, there is an opportunity to request a reduced or complete waiver of cost share. Another program where a person can request a cost share waiver is the Basin Studies program. So these are large-scale water supply and demand assessments on a basin-wide scale to look at climate change and how it's going to impact water resources within a basin and to identify adaptation strategies. And in that program, it's not a financial assistance program. Reclamation staff uses typically our share of the funding to help perform the technical analysis with whoever is requesting funding. But in that program, it's also possible to request a waiver of cost share. So I hope that helps. Again, please feel free to reach out if you have more questions.
Oliver, thank you. I just want one last chance to see if anyone has any questions. Please raise your hand or submit it in chat. But I just want to make sure we have time. We have a couple more minutes to answer questions, but we'll give you a few minutes of your day back if we don't have anything more. Matt, turn this over to you. And Kelly, if you want to bring up your camera, just BOR, have a tribal relations point of contact or liaison. Kelly, if you could bring up your camera.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, we can do, I think Jeff, we have several places where tribes can contact Reclamation in each of the 5 regions. We have Native American Affairs Program Managers. In addition to that, Jeff, I think Chelsea just posted the contact information for Native American Affairs Program, so please feel free to get in touch with those. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Matt. We do have one question. Turn it over to Crystal. Crystal, please unmute yourself and enable your camera. Please share your name and your affiliation. Crystal, are you able to unmute yourself? Go ahead and do that. Crystal, try again.
Hi, I'm with the Navajo Nation, and I'm curious about the emergency drought relief funding that has been described and how, because I know there's been emergency drought relief funding in the past with Bureau of Reclamation. I'm curious if the funding under the Bipartisan Infrastructure funding provides opportunity that's less restrictive than what was proposed in the past. Basically, if there's more opportunity to utilize that emergency drought funding, because I know the past funding that has been available under different funded avenues with Bureau of Reclamation, specifically for emergency drought funding, was very restrictive. So if anyone could provide feedback on that, I'd greatly appreciate it.
If you can talk about the emergency drought funding.
Yeah. Hi. So Crystal, thanks for your question. The emergency drought relief funding is governed by the Drought Act. And there are some restrictions on it that are, just in accordance with the act. It can't be used for permanent construction. And so I understand where you're coming from. Those restrictions are in there by law and haven't changed with the new bill funding. I guess maybe what has changed is that there's more funding available under the regular drought program, the drought response program for drought resiliency projects and drought planning. Now is a great time to apply under those competitive programs. The emergency drought program can be used for those real emergency situations, water hauling, temporary pipes, temporary pumps, but it is somewhat limited with respect to the on-the-ground projects just under that Drought Act.
Kelly, do you have anything to add from the Native American Affairs Program opportunities that may be available?
No, I don't. I just encourage, thank you, Avra, for bringing that forward. No, but I just encourage the tribes to participate in all of these funding opportunities. Having the tribes as partners is something that we're very focused on as an agency, and we look forward to having many more opportunities given the increased funding that's currently available to us. So thank you. And thanks, Chelsea, for posting the contact information.
Thank you,
I have
Kelly.
one follow-up question, Kelly, with regards to the Native American Affairs Technical Assistance funding. It was described by Deputy Commissioner Palumbo that, there's more funding available. And I know there was a max of like 200,000 per project. And, you know, I wondered if that increased amount has increased with the technical affairs funding for tribes specifically.
Yeah, we've worked through, the funding comes to us in a variety of ways, and we've worked within the legal authorities, within the legislative requirements that come along with it for each one of them. The technical assistance program did not get any funding under BIL. That being said, we have, through a variety of other avenues, received increased funding for the last 2 years, as Matt mentioned. And so, yeah, we've adjusted the maximum amounts depending on the funding availability and other factors. So, and I guess what you're suggesting is that, Crystal, is that Reclamation should look at increasing the allowable award amounts or eligible total funding in response to the increased funding. Is that kind of where you're headed?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to reply to that, Kelly. Yes, definitely, especially because a lot of these water infrastructure projects have been heavily hit by inflation. I think some of those historically appropriate, congressionally appropriated funding amounts are not sufficient to be reflective of the inflation that a lot of these projects have seen, which have significantly increased a number of projects throughout the Navajo Nation.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Avra, for that. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. I would like to thank Deputy Commissioner Palumbo and all of our other presenters today. Again, on behalf of the Bureau of Reclamation, thank you for attending today's session. We are dedicated to transparently implementing the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. This is the 7th information session, and we plan on having these into the future. To learn more, please go to usbr.gov/BIL to view all the previous sessions and all upcoming sessions. We share the information on how to register to be notified of information on the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, Water Smart, and other activities. Please register there if you would like to be updated when new information is available. We also have updated information on our frequently asked questions for Bill. That's also available on the website. If you have any additional questions, you may send those to usbr.bil@usbr.gov. Once again, that's usbr.bil@usbr.gov. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.